Island of Deception. The vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean stretched out in every direction, an endless blue canvas beneath the scorching sun. Captain Elias Blackwood stood at the helm of the Siren's Song, his weathered hands gripping the wheel as he squinted at the horizon. His crew of 15 had been at sea for nearly 3 months, their supplies running dangerously low. They needed to find land soon, or their fate would be sealed by the merciless sea. "Captain?" came a shout from the crow's nest. "Land ho! Off the starboard bow!" Elias's heart leapt. He hadn't expected to encounter any islands in this part of the ocean. Pulling out his spyglass, he peered through it, his eyes widening at the sight of a lush, green landmass in the distance. "All hands on deck!" he bellowed. "Prepare to make landfall!" As the siren song drew closer to the mysterious island, Elias couldn't shake an odd feeling. The island seemed different somehow. Its shape was peculiar, almost perfectly round, and its shoreline was unusually smooth. But after months at sea, any land was welcome land. The ship dropped anchor a few hundred yards from the shore, and Elias led a small landing party to explore the island. As they rowed towards land in their small boat, the captain noticed something else strange. There were no waves breaking on the beach. The water simply lapped gently against the shore. Stepping onto the sand, Elias and his crew marveled at the lush vegetation before them. Towering palm trees swayed in the breeze, their fronds casting dancing shadows on the ground. Colorful birds flitted between branches, their songs filling the air with a melodious chorus. "It's beautiful," whispered Sarah, the ship's navigator. "But something feels off." Elias nodded, unable to shake his own unease. "Fan out," he ordered. "Look for fresh water and anything edible. But stay alert." The crew dispersed, their excitement at being on solid ground overshadowing any lingering doubts. As they explored, they found an abundance of fruit trees and even a small freshwater spring bubbling up from the ground. It seemed too good to be true, a paradise dropped in the middle of the ocean just when they needed it most. As the sun began to set, Elias called his crew back together. They had gathered a bounty of fruits and filled their water barrels, their spirits high with the promise of full bellies and a safe harbor. "We'll stay here for a few days," Elias announced. "Rest up, repair the ship, and resupply. Then we'll chart a course for Dash." His words were cut short by a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, causing several crew members to stumble. "Earthquake?" someone suggested nervously. Elias frowned. "I've never heard of earthquakes in this part of the ocean. Let's get back to the ship, just to be safe." As they made their way back to the shore, the tremors intensified. The trees swayed more violently, no longer moved by just the wind. Birds took to the sky in panicked flocks, their cries drowning out the earlier peaceful songs. Reaching the beach, Elias and his crew stopped short, their jaws dropping in disbelief. The shoreline had changed. Where before it had been a gentle slope into the sea, now it seemed to have risen several feet, creating a steep drop-off. "What in the name of all that's holy?" Elias muttered. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the air, so loud it seemed to shake the very atoms of their beings. The entire island shuddered violently, sending the crew sprawling onto the sand. As they watched in horror, the trees at the center of the island began to sink, as if being swallowed by the earth itself. "Back to the ship!" Elias screamed, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "Now!" They scrambled for their rowboat, pushing it into the churning waves and clambering aboard. As they paddled frantically towards the siren's song, they looked back at the island, and what they saw defied all logic and reason. The island was moving, not drifting, as if carried by some powerful current, but actively lifting itself out of the water. As more of it rose from the depths, they realized with dawning terror that what they had mistaken for an island was, in fact, a living creature of monstrous proportions. A massive, turtle-like head emerged from one end of the island, its eyes each the size of their ship. At the other end, a tail the length of 10 galleons thrashed in the water, creating waves that threatened to capsize their tiny boat. "It's a Zeratin," Sarah whispered, her face pale with shock. I thought they were just legends. As the crew of the Siren Song watched in awe and terror, the Leviathan, for that was indeed what it was, continued to rise. Its shell, which they had mistaken for the island's terrain, was covered in centuries of accumulated soil, vegetation, and even small animals that had made their home on its back. The creature's movement sent massive waves in all directions. Elias and his landing party barely made it back to the ship, hauling themselves aboard just as a particularly large swell threatened to smash their rowboat against the hull. "Weigh anchor!" Elias roared as soon as his feet hit the deck. "Full sail! We need to put as much distance between us and that thing as possible." The crew sprang into action, their earlier exhaustion forgotten in the face of this impossible threat. As the Siren Song began to move, the Leviathan seemed to notice them for the first time. Its enormous head turned in their direction, eyes focusing on the tiny ship with an unsettling intelligence. And then, to their horror, it began to swim towards them. "How can something that big move so fast?" cried the ship's carpenter, his eyes wide with disbelief. Indeed, despite its enormous size, the Leviathan cut through the water with surprising speed and grace. Each stroke of its powerful flippers created waves that rocked the Siren's Song dangerously. Elias gripped the wheel, his knuckles white with the effort of keeping the ship steady. "We can't outrun it," he muttered to Sarah, who stood beside him. "We need a plan." As the Leviathan gained on them, its massive form blotting out the horizon behind them, Sarah's mind raced. She had read old tales of these creatures, dismissed as myths by most modern sailors. But one detail stuck in her memory. "Captain," she said urgently, "I have an idea. But it's risky." Elias glanced at her, then back at the approaching monster. "At this point, I'm open to anything." Sarah explained her plan quickly. According to legend, Leviathans were peaceful creatures unless provoked. Their pursuit might be driven more by curiosity than aggression. If they could communicate somehow, maybe they could convince it to leave them alone. "And how do you suggest we communicate with a giant sea monster?" Elias asked skeptically. Sarah pointed to the ship's bell. "Sound," she said. "They're said to be sensitive to certain frequencies. If we can find the right one." It was a long shot, but they were out of options. Elias gave the order, and the crew began experimenting with different sounds, ringing the ship's bell, beating drums, even singing in various pitches. For agonizing minutes, nothing seemed to work. The Leviathan continued its relentless pursuit, drawing ever closer. But then, as one of the crew members struck a particularly high note on a small flute, the creature's advance slowed. "That's it!" Sarah exclaimed. "Keep playing!" The flutist played on, his fingers flying over the instrument as he repeated the melody that had caught the Leviathan's attention. Gradually, the massive creature's speed decreased until it was merely floating alongside the Siren's Song, its giant eye level with the ship's deck. The crew stood frozen, hardly daring to breathe as they found themselves under the scrutiny of this ancient being. Up close, they could see the true scale of the Leviathan. Its eye alone was bigger than their largest lifeboat, and in its depths, they saw not the mindless gaze of a beast, but a profound intelligence that spoke of centuries, perhaps millennia, of existence. Slowly, carefully, Sarah approached the railing. Following some instinct she couldn't quite explain, she began to hum, matching her voice to the flute's melody. The Leviathan's eye focused on her, and to everyone's amazement, a low, rumbling hum emanated from the creature, harmonizing perfectly with Sarah's voice. For several minutes, this strange duet continued, woman and ancient being, connected by nothing more than a simple melody. Then, gradually, the Leviathan's hum faded away. It regarded the ship and its crew for a moment longer, then, with a grace that belied its enormous size, it began to turn away. "I don't believe it," Elias breathed, watching as the creature slowly swam off, its island-like shell once again breaking the surface of the water. "You did it, Sarah. You actually communicated with it." Sarah nodded, a look of wonder on her face. I think it was lonely," she said softly. "How long has it been swimming these waters, I wonder? How long since it encountered another living being that wasn't simply trying to exploit it as a temporary home?" As the Zaratan disappeared into the distance, the crew of the Siren's Song found themselves grappling with the implications of what they had just experienced. They had encountered a creature of legend, a being so ancient and vast that it challenged their very understanding of the world. Elias called the crew together, his face serious. "What we've seen today, it changes everything. But I need you all to understand something. If word gets out about this, every glory seeker and monster hunter in the world will be after that creature. Its days of peaceful solitude will be over." The crew nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "So we have a choice to make," Elias continued. "We can return to port, tell our tale, and likely make ourselves famous. Or we can keep this to ourselves, protect the Zaratan, and let it continue its lonely journey through the oceans." There was a moment of silence as each crew member wrestled with the decision. Then, one by one, they voiced their opinions. To Elias's pride, the consensus was clear. They would keep the Zaratan's existence a secret. "Very well," he said, a small smile on his face. "Then let this be our secret, a tale we'll tell only to each other on dark nights at sea. And let us hope that the Zaratan finds whatever it's looking for out there in the vast blue." Years passed, and the crew of the Siren's Song kept their word. They spoke of their encounter only among themselves, in hushed tones over cups of grog in dimly lit taverns. Some left the sea, haunted or inspired by what they had seen. Others, like Elias and Sarah, continued to sail, their eyes always scanning the horizon for a telltale shape that might be more than just an island. And somewhere out in the endless expanse of the ocean, the Zaratan continued its ageless journey. Perhaps it remembered the strange, small creatures that had sung to it. Perhaps it listened for their melody as it swam, a spot of warmth in the cold, lonely sea. For the crew of the Siren's Song, the world had become both larger and smaller that day. Larger, in that they now knew with certainty that there were things in this world beyond their wildest imaginings. And smaller, because they realized that even the most fantastic creatures could share a simple, profound connection with humanity. As for the Zaratan, it swam on, carrying on its back a small ecosystem of plants and animals. An island unto itself, a world in miniature, forever wandering the vast blue wilderness of the sea. And sometimes, just sometimes, if a ship passed by on a quiet night, they might hear a faint, melodious humming carried on the wind, a song of loneliness, of connection, and of the enduring mysteries of the deep. Part 2. The Siren's Song cut through the waves, its sails billowing in the warm tropical breeze. Captain Elias Blackwood stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the horizon with a mixture of hope and trepidation. It had been 5 years since their encounter with the Zaratan, and the memory of that day still haunted his dreams. Sarah, now his first mate, approached him with a concerned look. "Captain, the crew is getting restless. We've been sailing these waters for weeks without any sign of, well, you know." Elias nodded grimly. "I know, Sarah. But I can't shake this feeling. Something's calling us back here." Their search had begun after reports of strange occurrences in this part of the ocean, islands appearing and disappearing, massive waves with no apparent source, and eerie melodies carried on the wind. Elias and Sarah had recognized the signs immediately, and they knew they had to investigate. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, a shout came from the crow's nest. "Captain? There's something in the water!" Elias and Sarah rushed to the railing, peering into the darkening sea. At first, they saw nothing but the usual waves and foam. Then, a massive shape moved beneath the surface, causing the water to bulge and ripple. "It's him," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The Zaratan." But something was wrong. The creature's movements were erratic, almost panicked. As it breached the surface, they could see why. The Zaratan's shell, once a lush, thriving ecosystem, was now barren and scorched. Deep gashes marred its leathery skin, and its eyes, when they finally surfaced, were filled with pain and fear. "Dear God," Elias breathed. "What happened to it?" Before anyone could respond, a series of explosions rocked the water around them. In the distance, they could see a fleet of ships, their decks bristling with harpoon guns and strange, mechanical devices. "Whalers," Sarah spat. But not like any I've ever seen. Elias's face hardened. They're hunting the Leviathan. We can't let that happen. What followed was a desperate battle against both man and nature. The siren's song maneuvered between the Leviathan and the whaling fleet, using every trick in Elias's considerable repertoire to outmaneuver the larger, more heavily armed ships. Sarah led a team to tend to the Leviathan's wounds, using their old method of communication through music to calm the creature and gain its trust. As they worked, they discovered something astonishing. The Leviathan was not alone. A smaller shape, barely the size of their ship, huddled close to the giant creature. It's a baby, Sarah realized. The Leviathan has a child. The revelation changed everything. The crew of the Siren's Song fought with renewed vigor, knowing they were now protecting not just an ancient being, but a family. The battle raged through the night, with Elias using the Leviathan's massive form to their advantage, hiding in its wake and striking at the whaling ships when they least expected it. By dawn, the hunters had been driven off, their ships limping away with broken masts and shattered harpoons. As the sun rose, Elias, Sarah, and the crew found themselves floating in a calm sea, the two Leviathans circling them slowly. The wounds on the larger creature were beginning to heal, and new growth was already sprouting on its shell. "What now, Captain?" one of the crew asked. Elias looked at Sarah, then back at the magnificent creatures before them. "No," he said. "We become guardians. These waters aren't safe for them anymore. We'll escort them to a new home, somewhere humans haven't reached yet." And so began a new journey for the Siren's Song and its crew. They traveled to the farthest reaches of the ocean, battling storms, sea monsters, and the occasional persistent whaler. Along the way, they discovered more Leviathans, creating a small pod of the ancient creatures. Months turned into years, and the Siren's Song became legend among sailors, a ghost ship that appeared from nowhere to protect the ocean's most mysterious inhabitants. Elias and Sarah, their hair now streaked with gray, continued to lead their crew on this noble mission. Finally, after years of searching, they found it, a hidden sea, protected by treacherous currents and magnetic anomalies that confounded normal navigation. Here, the Leviathans could live in peace, free from the threat of human interference. As they prepared to leave their charges in their new home, Sarah approached the parent Leviathan one last time. She hummed a melody that had first forged their connection, and the creature responded in kind. In that moment, an understanding passed between them, a promise to remember, to protect, and to keep the wonders of the world safe from those who would exploit them. With heavy hearts but a sense of accomplishment, the crew of the Siren's Song set sail for home. They knew their lives had been changed forever by their encounters with the Leviathans. They had glimpsed a world beyond human understanding, and they would carry that knowledge with them always. As they left the hidden sea, Elias turned to Sarah with a smile. "You know," he said, "I hear there are stories of giant creatures living deep in the uncharted forests of South America. Fancy another adventure?" Sarah laughed, the sound carrying across the waves. "Always, Captain. Always." And so, the Siren's Song sailed on, its crew ready for whatever marvels, or dangers, the world had in store for them next. For they had learned that the greatest adventures come not from conquering the unknown, but from protecting it. The Medal of Legends. The legend of the Wandering Owl had persisted for centuries, whispered in taverns and scrawled in the margins of ancient maps. A massive turtle, larger than any island, roamed the vast oceans with an entire civilization thriving on its shell. And atop this already fantastical creature rode something even more extraordinary, a Leviathan, a colossal sea turtle of mythical proportions, its shell an ecosystem unto itself. But it wasn't just the marvels of nature that drew adventurers from across the globe to seek out this elusive wonder. No, it was the promise of Mithril, the legendary metal said to be lighter than a feather yet stronger than dragon scales. Rumors claimed that the ancient society living on the turtle's back had mastered the art of mithril crafting, creating wonders beyond imagination. Captain Lyra Stormwind stood at the helm of her ship, the Way Cutter, her keen eyes scanning the horizon. For 5 years, she had chased whispers and legends, following the trail of the wandering owl across treacherous seas. Her crew, a motley assortment of dreamers and rogues, shared her obsession, each for their own reasons. "Captain?" called her first mate, a grizzled dwarf named Grimlock. "Storm brewing on the starboard bow. Looks nasty." Lyra nodded, feeling the change in the air. "Might be nothing," she mused. "Or it might be exactly what we're looking for." Legend had it that the wandering owl was perpetually shrouded in mist and storm, a natural defense against those who would exploit its wonders. As the waycutter plunged into the roiling clouds, visibility dropped to near zero. Lightning crackled around them, and waves threatened to swamp the deck. For hours they battled the elements, Lyra's expert helmsmanship keeping them afloat against all odds. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the storm cleared. The crew gasped in collective awe at the sight before them. Rising from the sea like a mountain was the largest turtle they had ever seen. Its shell, easily a mile across, was covered in lush vegetation, with streams and waterfalls cascading down its sides. And there, perched atop this marvel, was the Zeratin, a second turtle, smaller but still immense, its own shell a riot of colorful coral and swaying palms. "By all the gods," Grimlock whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Lyra allowed herself a moment to savor their triumph before snapping back to action. "Prepare to make landfall," she ordered. "But remember, we don't know what kind of welcome we'll receive. Stay alert." As they drew closer, they could make out structures built into the larger turtle's shell, elegant spires and domes that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. On the beaches, figures moved about, some humanoid, others decidedly not. A group of these beings approached the shore as the wavecutter dropped anchor. They were tall and lithe, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl and eyes that reflected the deep blue of the ocean. One stepped forward, raising a hand in greeting. "Welcome, seekers," the being said, its voice melodious and androgynous. "I am Zephyr, emissary of the Shellborn. We have long awaited your arrival." Lyra blinked in surprise. "You expected us?" Zephyr smiled enigmatically. "The currents of fate flow in mysterious ways. Come, there is much to discuss." As Lyra and her crew were led into the heart of the Shellborn civilization, they marveled at the wonders around them. Buildings seemed to grow from the very shell of the great turtle, their walls alive with bioluminescent patterns. The Zeratin above them moved with ponderous grace, each step sending ripples through the ecosystem below. In the central plaza, a grand council awaited them. Beings of all shapes and sizes gathered, some clearly related to the pearl-skinned Zephyr, others resembling creatures from the deepest ocean trenches. At the center stood a figure that took Lyra's breath away, a woman with hair like seafoam and eyes that held the wisdom of millennia. "I am Thalassa, elder of the Shellborn," she announced. "You have journeyed far, driven by dreams of mithril and marvels. But tell me, Captain Stormwind, what do you truly seek?" Lyra hesitated, suddenly unsure. She had come for the mithril, yes, but standing here, in this place of impossible beauty, that goal seemed shallow. I sought to prove the legend true," she admitted. "To discover wonders beyond imagination." Thalassa nodded, a knowing smile on her lips. "And so you have. But the greatest wonder is not the metal you seek, nor even the creatures that bear us across the endless sea. It is the balance, the harmony between all things that is our most precious treasure." Over the next days, Lyra and her crew were given a glimpse into the life of the Shellborn. They learned of the symbiotic relationship between the giant turtle, the Zeratin, and the myriad creatures that called this place home. The Shellborn were not merely passengers on this journey, but caretakers, maintaining the delicate balance that allowed their world to thrive. Mithril, they discovered, was indeed real, but it was not mined or forged. Instead, it was cultivated, grown in shimmering veins within the shell of the Zeratin itself. The process took decades, requiring a deep connection to the rhythms of their living world. "We do not hoard our treasures," Zephyr explained as they watched a Shellborn artisan shape a delicate mithril sculpture with nothing but the power of their mind. "But neither can we simply give them away. The balance must be maintained." Lyra understood then that she and her crew faced a choice. They could leave with a small amount of mithril, enough to prove their discovery and make them wealthy beyond their dreams. Or they could stay, learn the ways of the Shellborn, and become part of something greater than themselves. The decision was not unanimous. Some of her crew, their heads filled with visions of riches, chose to return to the world they knew. Lyra watched them sail away with a mixture of sadness and understanding. But for her and those who remained, a new adventure was just beginning. Years passed, and Lyra found herself transformed. She learned to commune with the great turtle and the Zeratin, to feel the pulse of life that flowed through their entire ecosystem. She mastered the art of mithril cultivation, creating wonders that merged technology and nature in ways she had never imagined possible. But the outside world had not forgotten the legend of the Wandering Isle. Other ships came, some seeking knowledge, others driven by greed. The Shellborn and their new allies faced difficult choices: how much to reveal, how to protect their home while still engaging with the wider world. Lyra often stood at the edge of the Zeratin's shell, looking out over the endless ocean. She thought of the life she had left behind, the adventures she had dreamed of as a young captain. But then she would turn and see the wonders she now called home, the impossible harmony of nature and civilization, the friends she had made among beings she once thought mere legend. And she knew, deep in her heart, that she had found something far greater than any treasure she had ever imagined. One day, as she watched a new ship approach on the horizon, Lyra felt a familiar presence beside her. Thalassa, her hair rippling in the sea breeze, gazed out at the newcomers with ancient eyes. "The world is changing," the elder mused. "More and more seek us out. We cannot remain hidden forever." Lyra nodded, understanding the weight of those words. "What will you do?" Thalassa turned to her, a spark of mischief in her ageless eyes. "We will adapt, as we always have. But perhaps it is time for us to do more than simply wander. Perhaps it is time for the Wandering Isle to choose a new direction." And with those words, Lyra felt the great turtle beneath them shift, changing course for the first time in centuries. The Zeratin above rumbled in harmony, and a thrill of excitement ran through every inhabitant of their extraordinary world. A new chapter was beginning, not just for the Shellborn, but for all the oceans of their world. And Lyra Stormwind, once a seeker of legends, now a guardian of wonders, smiled as she faced the unknown horizon. For she knew that the greatest adventures were those that reshaped the very world itself, and that the true treasure was not what you found, but what you built together. As the Wandering Isle moved with purpose towards a future yet unwritten, Lyra felt the thrill of discovery rekindle in her heart. The legend was real, but the truth was far more wonderful than anyone could have imagined. And now, that wonder was about to change the world. Part 2. 5 years had passed since the Wandering Isle had set a new course, venturing into uncharted waters both literally and figuratively. The world had changed dramatically in that time, as news of the floating marvels spread across continents and oceans. Lyra Stormwind, now a respected elder among the Shellborn, stood atop the Zeratin's shell, gazing out at the flotilla of ships surrounding them. Vessels of all sizes and origins bobbed in the gentle waves, from sleek diplomatic cruisers to rugged research vessels. The Wandering Isle had become a nexus of cultural exchange, scientific discovery, and diplomatic negotiations. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" came a familiar voice. Thalassa appeared beside her, the elder's eyes twinkling with a mixture of pride and concern. Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's more than we ever imagined. But I can't help wondering if we've struck the right balance." The integration of the Wandering Isle into the wider world had not been without its challenges. While many approached with genuine curiosity and respect, others saw only the potential for exploitation. The Shellborn's advanced biotechnology, particularly their mastery of mithril cultivation, had sparked a gold rush of sorts. Thalassa sighed, her gaze sweeping across the assembled ships. "Balance is never static, my dear. It must be constantly maintained, adjusted, fought for if necessary." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from below. Zephyr, looking more harried than Lyra had ever seen the usually serene being, rushed towards them. "Elders, we've received word from our deep-sea scouts. Something is wrong with the great turtle. Its course has become erratic, and there are signs of distress." Alarm shot through Lyra. The great turtle was more than just their home. It was the foundation of their entire ecosystem. If something were to happen to it, gather the council, Thalassa commanded, and send word to our allies. We may need their help. As the Shellborn mobilized, Lyra coordinated with the fleet surrounding them. Years of diplomacy had forged strong bonds with many nations and organizations, and now those relationships were put to the test. Research submarines were deployed to examine the Great Turtle from below, while teams of Shellborn healers, aided by visiting scientists, worked to diagnose the problem. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the entire community. The Great Turtle, ancient beyond reckoning, was dying. Centuries of accumulated pollutants, combined with subtle changes in ocean temperature and chemistry, had taken their toll. The creature's immune system was failing, and parasites were attacking its vital organs. "Can't we heal it?" Lyra asked desperately, looking around the council chamber at faces etched with worry. "Our magic, our technology. There must be something we can do." An elderly Shellborn scientist shook his head sadly. "The damage is too extensive, too deeply rooted. We can ease its pain, perhaps slow the decline, but..." The implications were staggering. Not only would they lose their home, but the death of such a massive creature would have catastrophic effects on the ocean ecosystem. And what of the Zeratin perched atop it? The two creatures were symbiotically linked in ways not even the Shellborn fully understood. As news spread, panic began to set in. Some of the visiting ships began to pull away, fearing what might happen when the Great Turtle finally succumbed. Others drew closer, offering assistance or seeking to salvage what they could from the impending disaster. In the midst of the chaos, Lyra found herself drawn to the edge of the shell, staring down at the troubled waters below. She thought of all they had built here, all they had learned and shared with the world. Was it all to be lost? A soft melody reached her ears, barely audible above the commotion. Following the sound, Lyra found a group of young Shellborn gathered near one of the waterfalls that cascaded down the Great Turtle's shell. They were singing, their voices weaving together in a complex harmony that seemed to resonate with the very essence of their home. As she watched, the water in the fall began to shimmer with an otherworldly light. The singing grew louder, and Lyra felt a surge of energy pulse through the shell beneath her feet. Realization dawned. The Shellborn had always known that their home was more than just a creature. It was a nexus of magical and natural forces. The song was awakening something deep within the Great Turtle, something ancient and powerful. Lyra joined her voice to the chorus, drawing on everything she had learned in her years among the Shellborn. Others noticed and joined in, not just Shellborn, but visitors from a dozen different nations, their voices blending in a symphony of hope and determination. Deep below, the Great Turtle stirred. Its eyes, long closed, opened slowly. The Zeratin above rumbled in response, and a wave of energy pulsed outward, touching every creature for miles around. In that moment, a new connection was forged. The Great Turtle's consciousness, vast and alien, reached out to all those who called it home. Lyra gasped as understanding flooded her mind. The turtle was not dying, it was evolving, entering a new phase of its impossibly long life cycle. But it needed help. The parasites and pollutants were real threats, and the turtle's transformation had left it vulnerable. With this new connection, however, they could work together in ways never before possible. The next few months were a flurry of activity unlike anything the Wandering Owl had ever seen. Shellborn healers worked alongside human doctors and scientists from a dozen worlds. Mithril was cultivated and shaped into new forms, creating a network of conduits that helped purge toxins from the Great Turtle's system. The Zeratin, too, played its part. Its own magical nature amplified the healing energies being channeled through the larger creature. Slowly but surely, the Great Turtle's health began to improve. As the crisis passed, Lyra stood once again at the edge of the shell, marveling at how much had changed. The Wandering Owl was no longer just a hidden wonder or a diplomatic curiosity. It had become a symbol of what was possible when the world came together, a living example of harmony between nature and civilization. "So," Thalassa said, appearing beside her with a knowing smile, "what's our heading now, Captain Stormwind?" Lyra laughed, feeling the gentle pulse of the Great Turtle's movements beneath her feet. The connection they had forged during the crisis remained, a constant reminder of the miracles that surrounded them. "The world's a lot bigger than we ever imagined," she replied, gazing out at the horizon. "And I think it's time we explored it properly. Not as wanderers or curiosities, but as teachers and learners both." Thalassa nodded approvingly. "A new age for the wandering owl. And for the world." As if in response to their words, the great turtle changed course, setting off towards distant shores. The Zeratin above shifted, adjusting its position, and the entire ecosystem hummed with renewed vitality. Lyra smiled, feeling the thrill of a new adventure beginning. The legend of the wandering owl had been just the beginning. Now they were writing a new story, one of unity, discovery, and hope for the future. And this story, she knew, would change the world in ways they had only begun to imagine. Leviathan of the Deep. The legend of the Leviathan of the Deep had spread like wildfire across the globe. A monstrous plesiosaur, larger than any known creature, roamed the oceans with a Zeratin on its back. This colossal beast was said to attack ships and sailors, leaving destruction in its wake. But what truly captured the world's imagination was the rumor that its back was laden with a vast amount of gold and treasure, the spoils of countless sunken ships. Governments issued warnings to all shipping vessels and fishermen to avoid the creature at all costs. The seas became a place of fear and fascination, with tales of the Leviathan growing more elaborate with each retelling. Amidst the chaos, a team of scientists prepared for a daring expedition to study the gigantic behemoth and uncover the truth behind the legend. Dr. Evelyn Carter, a renowned marine biologist, stood on the deck of the research vessel Oceanus, her eyes scanning the horizon. She had spent years studying marine megafauna, but nothing had prepared her for this. The team she had assembled was the best in their fields, each driven by a mix of scientific curiosity and the lure of the unknown. "Dr. Carter," called Dr. Marcus Hayes, a marine geologist and her second-in-command. "We're approaching the coordinates where the last sighting was reported." Evelyn nodded, her heart pounding with anticipation. "All hands on deck. Prepare the submersibles and sonar equipment. We need to be ready for anything." The Oceanus was equipped with state-of-the-art technology, including deep-sea submersibles, advanced sonar, and remotely operated vehicles, ROVs. The team had spent months preparing for this expedition, and now, as they neared the supposed territory of the Leviathan, the tension was palpable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sea in shades of orange and purple, the crew deployed the sonar equipment. The eerie pings echoed through the water, painting a picture of the depths below. For hours, they scanned the ocean floor, finding nothing but the usual marine life. Then, just as hope began to wane, the sonar picked up a massive, moving object. The size and speed of the creature were unlike anything they had ever seen. "That's it," Evelyn whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "We've found it." The team quickly launched the submersibles, piloted by Dr. Hayes and Dr. Sofia Ramirez, a marine ecologist. Evelyn monitored their progress from the control room, her fingers dancing over the controls as she guided the ROVs alongside the submersibles. As they descended into the depths, the water grew darker and colder. The lights of the submersibles cut through the gloom, revealing the eerie beauty of the deep sea. Strange, bioluminescent creatures flitted past, their bodies glowing with an otherworldly light. And then they saw it. The Leviathan was even more magnificent and terrifying than the legends had described. Its massive body moved with a grace that belied its size, its long neck and powerful flippers propelling it through the water with ease. On its back, the Zeratin clung like a living island, its shell covered in coral, seaweed, and the glittering gold of sunken treasures. "Unbelievable," Sophia breathed, her voice crackling over the comms. "It's like something out of a dream." The team watched in awe as the Leviathan swam through the water, its presence commanding and majestic. But their wonder was short-lived. Without warning, the creature turned its massive head towards the submersibles, its eyes glowing with an intelligent, predatory light. "Get out of there!" Evelyn shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "It's coming for you!" The submersibles veered away, their engines roaring as they tried to escape. But the Leviathan was faster. With a powerful sweep of its flippers, it closed the distance, its massive jaws snapping shut just inches from Dr. Hayes' submersible. "Mayday! Mayday!" Hayes' voice crackled over the comms. "We're under attack!" Evelyn's heart raced as she watched the Leviathan pursue the submersibles. The creature's movements were swift and calculated, its predatory instincts honed by centuries of survival. The submersibles dodged and weaved, but the Leviathan was relentless. "Deploy the ROVs," Evelyn ordered, her mind racing for a solution. "We need to distract it." The ROVs, equipped with bright lights and noisemakers, were launched into the water. They darted around the Leviathan, their lights flashing and their noisemakers blaring. The creature paused, momentarily confused by the sudden barrage of stimuli. "Now! Get back to the surface!" Evelyn shouted. The submersibles took advantage of the distraction, their engines roaring as they ascended towards the safety of the Oceanus. The Leviathan snapped at the ROVs, its massive jaws closing around one and crushing it with ease. But the distraction had worked. The submersibles reached the surface, their pilots shaken but unharmed. As the team regrouped on the deck of the Oceanus, Evelyn's mind raced with questions. The Leviathan was more than just a mindless predator. Its intelligence and behavior suggested a level of awareness that was both fascinating and terrifying. "We need to understand it," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We need to find a way to study it without provoking it." The team spent the next few days analyzing the data they had collected. They studied the Leviathan's movements, its interactions with the Zeratin, and the patterns of its attacks. They also examined the treasure on the Zeratin's back, trying to understand its origins and significance. As they delved deeper into their research, a picture began to emerge. The Leviathan was not just a predator, it was a guardian. The treasure on the Zeratin's back was not just a random collection of gold and jewels. It was a hoard carefully curated and protected by the creature. Evelyn's mind raced with possibilities. What if the Leviathan was not just a monster, but a sentient being with a purpose? What if the treasure it guarded was not just valuable, but held some deeper significance? Driven by these questions, the team devised a new plan. They would approach the Leviathan with caution, using a combination of technology and diplomacy to communicate with it. They would show it that they were not a threat, but allies in the quest for knowledge. The Oceanus returned to the Leviathan's territory, its crew filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They deployed a new submersible, equipped with advanced communication devices and a payload of bioluminescent markers. As the submersible descended into the depths, Evelyn watched anxiously from the control room. The Leviathan appeared on the sonar, its massive form moving through the water with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. "Activate the markers," Evelyn ordered. The submersible released the bioluminescent markers, creating a trail of light that led towards the Leviathan. The creature paused, its eyes glowing with curiosity as it followed the trail. "Now, initiate the communication sequence," Evelyn instructed. The submersible emitted a series of low-frequency sounds, carefully calibrated to mimic the vocalizations of marine mammals. The Leviathan responded, its own vocalizations resonating through the water. "It's working," Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with amazement. "It's communicating with us." The team watched in awe as the Leviathan and the submersible exchanged vocalizations. The creature's responses were complex and varied, suggesting a level of intelligence that was both fascinating and humbling. As the communication continued, the Leviathan's demeanor changed. It became less aggressive, its movements more relaxed. The submersible approached the Zeratin, its cameras capturing detailed images of the treasure on its back. Evelyn's heart raced as she studied the images. The treasure was not just gold and jewels. It included artifacts from ancient civilizations, each piece carefully placed and preserved. "This is incredible," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "The Leviathan is not just a guardian. It's a curator, preserving the history of the ocean." The team spent the next few weeks studying the Leviathan and its treasure. They learned to communicate with the creature, gaining its trust and understanding its behavior. They discovered that the Zeratin was an integral part of the Leviathan's ecosystem, providing a stable platform for the treasure and a habitat for a diverse array of marine life. As their research progressed, the team made a groundbreaking discovery. The treasure on the Zeratin's back included a series of ancient scrolls, written in a language that had long been lost to history. With the Leviathan's cooperation, they carefully retrieved the scrolls and brought them to the surface for analysis. The scrolls revealed a story that spanned millennia. They told of an ancient civilization that had once thrived in harmony with the ocean, guided by the wisdom of the Leviathan. The treasure was not just a collection of valuable items, but a repository of knowledge, preserved for future generations. Evelyn and her team were awestruck by the magnitude of their discovery. The Leviathan was not just a creature of legend, but a living link to a forgotten past. Its intelligence and purpose were a testament to the deep connection between humanity and the ocean. As the Oceanus prepared to leave the Leviathan's territory, Evelyn stood on the deck, gazing out at the vast expanse of the sea. She felt a profound sense of gratitude and responsibility. The Leviathan had entrusted them with its secrets, and it was their duty to honor that trust. "We have so much to learn from the ocean," she said, her voice filled with determination. "And so much to protect." The Oceanus set sail, carrying with it the knowledge and wisdom of the Leviathan. The team knew that their journey was far from over. They had uncovered a treasure beyond measure, and it was their mission to share it with the world. As they sailed into the horizon, the Leviathan watched from the depths, its eyes glowing with a knowing light. It had seen civilizations rise and fall, but it had also seen the enduring spirit of discovery and wonder. And in that spirit, it found hope for the future. The legend of the Leviathan of the deep would continue to inspire and captivate. But now it was more than just a tale of terror and treasure. It was a story of connection, understanding, and the boundless mysteries of the ocean. And it was a story that would be told for generations to come. Part 2. The Oceanus had returned to port with its groundbreaking discoveries, and the world was abuzz with the revelations about the Leviathan of the deep. The ancient scrolls, the treasure, and the newfound understanding of the Leviathan's role as a guardian and curator of oceanic history had captivated the imaginations of scientists, historians, and the general public alike. Dr. Evelyn Carter and her team were hailed as pioneers, their names becoming synonymous with one of the greatest marine discoveries of the century. But for Evelyn, the journey was far from over. The Leviathan had entrusted them with its secrets, and she felt a profound responsibility to continue their work. Months passed, and the Oceanus was refitted with even more advanced technology, funded by grants and donations from institutions eager to support their mission. The team had grown, now including linguists, historians, and additional marine biologists, all driven by the desire to uncover more about the ancient civilization and the Leviathan's role in preserving it. As the Oceanus set sail once more, Evelyn stood on the deck, her heart filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They were returning to the Leviathan's territory, but this time, they had a new goal: to explore the depths of the ocean floor beneath the Leviathan and uncover the remnants of the ancient civilization that had once thrived there. "Ready for another adventure?" Dr. Marcus Hayes asked, joining her at the railing. Evelyn smiled, her eyes sparkling with determination. "More than ever. Let's see what secrets the ocean has yet to reveal." The journey back to the Leviathan's territory was uneventful, the calm seas belying the excitement that buzzed through the crew. As they approached the coordinates, the familiar sight of the Leviathan and the Zeratin came into view, their massive forms moving gracefully through the water. "Deploy the submersibles and ROVs," Evelyn ordered. "Let's get a closer look at the ocean floor." The submersibles descended into the depths, their lights cutting through the darkness. The ROVs followed, equipped with advanced imaging technology and sampling equipment. As they neared the ocean floor, the team watched in awe as the landscape unfolded before them. The seabed was littered with the remnants of an ancient city, its structures partially buried in sediment and encrusted with marine life. Columns and statues, once grand and imposing, now lay in ruins, their surfaces worn smooth by the passage of time. "This is incredible," Sofia Ramirez said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's like a lost Atlantis." The team carefully navigated the submersibles through the ruins, capturing detailed images and collecting samples for analysis. They discovered intricate carvings on the walls of the structures, depicting scenes of daily life, rituals, and the reverence the ancient civilization had for the Leviathan. As they explored further, they found a massive temple, its entrance guarded by statues of the Leviathan and the Zeratin. The carvings on the temple walls told a story of a symbiotic relationship between the ancient people and the Leviathan, a partnership that had allowed both to thrive. Evelyn's heart raced as they entered the temple, the submersible's lights illuminating the interior. At the center of the temple, they found a large chamber filled with artifacts, including more scrolls and tablets, each inscribed with the ancient language. "We need to bring these to the surface," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with excitement. "This could be the key to understanding their entire civilization." The team carefully retrieved the artifacts, bringing them back to the Oceanus for analysis. As the linguists and historians began the painstaking work of translating the scrolls and tablets, a picture of the ancient civilization began to emerge. The scrolls revealed that the ancient people had possessed advanced knowledge of marine biology, geology, and metallurgy. They had developed techniques for cultivating mithril and other precious metals, using them to create tools, weapons, and intricate works of art. But the most astonishing revelation was the discovery of a series of prophecies, foretelling the rise and fall of their civilization and the eventual return of the Leviathan's guardians. The prophecies spoke of a time when the ocean would be threatened by human activity, and the Leviathan would rise to protect its treasures and the balance of the marine ecosystem. Evelyn and her team were stunned by the implications. The Leviathan was not just a guardian of the past, but a protector of the future. Its attacks on ships and sailors were not acts of mindless aggression, but a response to the threats posed by pollution, overfishing, and climate change. "We have a responsibility to share this knowledge with the world," Evelyn said, her voice filled with conviction. "We need to work together to protect the ocean and ensure the survival of the Leviathan and its treasures." The Oceanus returned to port once more, carrying with it the knowledge and wisdom of the ancient civilization. Evelyn and her team presented their findings to the scientific community, governments, and environmental organizations, urging them to take action to protect the ocean and its inhabitants. Their message resonated, sparking a global movement to reduce pollution, protect marine habitats, and promote sustainable fishing practices. The Leviathan became a symbol of the ocean's resilience and the importance of preserving its delicate balance. As the world rallied to protect the ocean, Evelyn and her team continued their work, exploring the depths and uncovering more secrets of the ancient civilization. They forged a deeper connection with the Leviathan, learning to communicate with it and understand its needs. Years passed, and the Oceanus became a beacon of hope and discovery, its crew dedicated to the mission of protecting the ocean and its wonders. Evelyn, now a respected elder in the scientific community, stood on the deck, gazing out at the horizon. "Ready for another adventure?" Marcus asked, joining her at the railing. Evelyn smiled, her eyes filled with determination. "Always. The ocean still has many secrets to reveal, and we're just getting started." As the Oceanus set sail once more, the Leviathan watched from the depths, its eyes glowing with a knowing light. It had seen civilizations rise and fall, but it had also seen the enduring spirit of discovery and wonder. And in that spirit, it found hope for the future. The legend of the Leviathan of the deep would continue to inspire and captivate, but now it was more than just a tale of terror and treasure. It was a story of connection, understanding, and the boundless mysteries of the ocean. And it was a story that would be told for generations to come. The Atlantean Giant. The vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean stretched out in every direction, its surface a shimmering blue under the midday sun. Captain Amelia Blackwood stood at the helm of the Stargazer, her weathered hands gripping the wheel as she scanned the horizon. Her crew of 20 had been at sea for months, chasing a legend that most dismissed as mere fantasy. "Captain?" called her first mate Zeke from the crow's nest. "Something on the starboard bow." Amelia's heart raced as she pulled out her spyglass. Through the lens, she saw an impossible sight, a massive shape breaking the surface of the water, far larger than any whale she had ever encountered. And on its back, like a living island, was a Zeratin, a giant sea turtle of mythical proportions. "All hands on deck!" Amelia shouted, her voice carrying over the wind. "Prepare to approach!" As the stargazer drew closer, the true scale of the creatures became apparent. The whale was easily the size of a small island, its blue-gray skin scarred and weathered by centuries in the sea. The Zeratin on its back was nearly as large, its shell covered in a thriving ecosystem of plants and small animals. But what truly caught Amelia's eye was a faint blue glow emanating from the whale's chest, visible even through its thick hide. Her breath caught in her throat. Could it be true? The legendary blue jewel, said to be the key ingredient in creating the Philosopher's Stone? "Steady as she goes," Amelia ordered, her voice calm despite the excitement coursing through her veins. "We don't want to startle them." As they approached, the whale and Zeratin seemed to take notice of the ship. The massive creatures slowed their pace, turning slightly to observe the tiny vessel that dared to come near. Amelia made a decision. "Lower the longboat. Zeke, you're with me. The rest of you, keep the ship at a safe distance." Moments later, Amelia and Zeke were rowing towards the colossal duo. As they drew closer, they could hear the deep, resonant song of the whale, a melody that seemed to vibrate through the very air around them. "Captain," Zeke whispered, his eyes wide with awe. "Look at the Zeratin's shell." Amelia glanced up and gasped. The Zeratin's shell was covered in intricate carvings, telling a story in a language she had never seen before. Ancient symbols and images depicted epic battles, great migrations, and what appeared to be rituals centered around a glowing blue stone. As their boat bumped gently against the whale's side, Amelia felt a strange sensation wash over her. It was as if the whale's song had penetrated her mind, conveying emotions and images that defied explanation. "They're welcoming us," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Carefully, they climbed onto the whale's back, their feet finding purchase on its rough skin. As they made their way towards the Zeratin, Amelia noticed small creatures scurrying about, miniature ecosystems thriving in the unique environment created by these two ancient beings. When they reached the base of the Zeratin's shell, Amelia placed her hand on its surface. To her surprise, the shell was warm to the touch, pulsing with a life of its own. Suddenly, a voice echoed in her mind, ancient and wise. "You seek the heart of the sea, little one." Amelia stumbled back, startled. Zeke caught her arm, steadying her. "Captain? What is it?" "The Zeratin," she whispered. "It's speaking to me." Gathering her courage, Amelia addressed the ancient creature. "Yes, we seek the blue jewel, the key to the Philosopher's Stone." A rumbling laugh filled her mind. "Many have sought it, few understand its true nature. Are you prepared for the knowledge it brings?" Amelia hesitated, then nodded firmly. "We are." The Zeratin's shell began to glow, and a section of it shifted, revealing a hidden passage. "Follow the path," the voice instructed. "But be warned, the truth may not be what you expect." Amelia and Zeke exchanged glances, then entered the passage. Inside, they found themselves in a vast chamber, its walls lined with bioluminescent algae that cast an ethereal blue light. At the center of the chamber was a pool of crystal-clear water, and suspended above it, pulsing with an inner light, was the blue jewel. As they approached, Amelia felt a pull, an irresistible urge to touch the jewel. When her fingers made contact with its smooth surface, a flood of images and sensations overwhelmed her. She saw the birth of the ocean, the evolution of life from single-celled organisms to the complex creatures that now inhabited the seas. She witnessed the rise and fall of ancient civilizations, some so advanced they made modern technology seem primitive by comparison. And through it all, she saw the whale and the Zeratin, guardians of the ocean's deepest secrets, protectors of a knowledge too vast for any one being to comprehend. When the visions faded, Amelia found herself on her knees, tears streaming down her face. Zeke knelt beside her, concern etched on his features. "Captain? Are you all right?" Amelia nodded, struggling to find words to describe what she had experienced. The jewel, she said finally. It's not just an ingredient for the Philosopher's Stone. It's the collected wisdom of the ocean itself. The Zeratin's voice echoed in her mind once more. Now you understand, little one. The true Philosopher's Stone is not a thing to be created, but a state of understanding. The blue jewel is but a key to unlock that knowledge. Amelia stood, her legs shaky but her resolve firm. We can't take it, she said to Zeke. It belongs here, with them. Zeke nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. The crew won't be happy, he said. We've come so far. We'll explain, Amelia replied. And if they don't understand, well, some secrets are meant to remain secret. As they made their way back to the surface, Amelia felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The whale's songs seemed to have taken on a new meaning, a melody of ancient wisdom and the interconnectedness of all life. When they reached their ship, Amelia gathered her crew and shared what she had learned. To her surprise and relief, most seemed to understand the importance of leaving the blue jewel where it belonged. As the Stargazer set sail, leaving the whale and Zeratin behind, Amelia stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She knew that their journey had changed them all in ways they were only beginning to understand. In the years that followed, tales of the Stargazer's encounter with the whale and Zeratin spread throughout the maritime world. Some dismissed it as mere legend, while others set out in search of the mythical creatures and their precious jewel. But Amelia and her crew kept the true nature of their discovery a closely guarded secret. They understood that some knowledge was too powerful, too profound to be wielded by those unprepared for its consequences. Instead, they dedicated themselves to protecting the oceans, using the wisdom they had gained to promote conservation and respect for the marine world. They became advocates for the mysterious creatures that called the sea their home, and guardians of the delicate balance that sustained life beneath the waves. And on quiet nights, when the sea was calm and the stars shone brightly overhead, Amelia would sometimes hear the faint echo of the whale's song, a reminder of the vast, beautiful mystery that was the ocean, and the responsibility they all shared to protect it. The blue jewel remained where it belonged, a beacon of ancient wisdom hidden in the depths of the sea, waiting for the day when humanity might be ready to truly understand its power. And the whale and Zeratin continued their eternal journey, guardians of a secret that could change the world if only the world were ready to receive it. As for Amelia and her crew, they had found something far more valuable than the Philosopher's Stone. They had discovered a purpose, a connection to the vast, mysterious world beneath the waves, and a responsibility to protect it for generations to come. And so, the Stargazer sailed on, its crew forever changed by their encounter with the whale, the Zeratin, and the blue jewel that held the wisdom of the ages. They had sought a legend and found a truth far greater than they could have imagined, a truth that would guide them for the rest of their days. As they navigated the endless blue of the world's oceans, guardians of a secret that could change the world. Part 2. The Stargazer had become a symbol of hope and conservation, its crew renowned for their dedication to protecting the ocean and its inhabitants. Captain Amelia Blackwood and her team had spent years advocating for marine conservation, sharing the wisdom they had gained from their encounter with the whale and the Zeratin. Their efforts had sparked a global movement, inspiring countless others to join the cause. But the ocean was vast, and its mysteries were far from fully uncovered. Amelia knew that their journey was far from over. There were still secrets hidden in the depths, waiting to be discovered. And so, the Stargazer continued its voyage, driven by a sense of purpose and a deep connection to the sea. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Amelia stood on the deck, her eyes scanning the endless expanse of water. She felt a familiar sense of anticipation, a feeling that something extraordinary was on the horizon. "Captain," called Zeke, her first mate, as he approached. "We've received a message from the Marine Research Institute. They want us to investigate a series of unusual seismic readings in the South Pacific." Amelia's curiosity was piqued. "Seismic readings? What do they think it is?" Zeke shrugged. "They're not sure. Could be volcanic activity, or something else entirely. They want us to check it out." Amelia nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. Set a course for the coordinates. Let's see what we can find. The stargazer sailed through the night, its crew filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As they approached the coordinates, the seismic readings grew stronger, indicating that whatever was causing the disturbances was close. Deploy the submersibles and sonar equipment, Amelia ordered. Let's get a closer look. The submersibles descended into the depths, their lights cutting through the darkness. The sonar pings echoed through the water, painting a picture of the ocean floor. As they neared the source of the readings, the team was stunned by what they saw. A massive underwater cavern, its entrance partially obscured by rock formations, lay before them. The seismic activity seemed to be emanating from within the cavern, suggesting that something extraordinary was hidden inside. Let's go in, Amelia said, her voice filled with determination. But proceed with caution. We don't know what we're dealing with. The submersibles entered the cavern, their lights illuminating the walls covered in bioluminescent algae. The cavern was vast, its ceiling stretching high above them. As they ventured deeper, they began to see signs of an ancient civilization, carvings on the walls, remnants of structures, and artifacts scattered across the cavern floor. This is incredible, Sofia Ramirez, the marine ecologist, said over the comms. It's like an underwater city. The team carefully navigated the submersibles through the cavern, capturing detailed images and collecting samples for analysis. As they explored further, they discovered a central chamber, its walls adorned with intricate carvings depicting scenes of daily life, rituals, and what appeared to be a connection to the whale and Zeratin. At the center of the chamber, they found a massive stone pedestal, and atop it, a glowing blue crystal, similar to the one they had seen in the whale's chest. The crystal pulsed with an inner light, casting an ethereal glow across the chamber. Captain, you need to see this, Marcus Hayes, the marine geologist, said, his voice filled with awe. Amelia guided her submersible into the chamber, her eyes widening as she took in the sight. The blue crystal seemed to resonate with a powerful energy, its light reflecting off the walls and creating a mesmerizing display. This must be the source of the seismic activity, Amelia said. But what is it? As they approached the pedestal, the crystal's light intensified, and a deep, resonant hum filled the chamber. Amelia felt a familiar sensation wash over her, similar to the one she had experienced when she touched the blue jewel in the whale's chest. It's connected to the whale and Zeratin, she realized. This crystal is part of the same ancient knowledge. The team carefully retrieved the crystal, bringing it back to the surface for analysis. As they studied it, they discovered that it contained a vast amount of information, encoded in a language that was similar to the one they had seen in the ancient scrolls. Evelyn and her team worked tirelessly to decipher the crystal's contents, uncovering a wealth of knowledge about the ancient civilization and their connection to the ocean. They learned that the crystal was a repository of wisdom, containing information about marine biology, geology, and the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone. But the most astonishing revelation was the discovery of a series of prophecies, foretelling the rise and fall of their civilization and the eventual return of the Leviathan's guardians. The prophecies spoke of a time when the ocean would be threatened by human activity, and the Leviathan would rise to protect its treasures and the balance of the marine ecosystem. Evelyn and her team were stunned by the implications. The Leviathan was not just a guardian of the past, but a protector of the future. Its attacks on ships and sailors were not acts of mindless aggression, but a response to the threats posed by pollution, overfishing, and climate change. We have a responsibility to share this knowledge with the world, Evelyn said, her voice filled with conviction. We need to work together to protect the ocean and ensure the survival of the Leviathan and its treasures. The Oceanus returned to port once more, carrying with it the knowledge and wisdom of the ancient civilization. Evelyn and her team presented their findings to the scientific community, governments, and environmental organizations, urging them to take action to protect the ocean and its inhabitants. Their message resonated, sparking a global movement to reduce pollution, protect marine habitats, and promote sustainable fishing practices. The Leviathan became a symbol of the ocean's resilience and the importance of preserving its delicate balance. As the world rallied to protect the ocean, Evelyn and her team continued their work, exploring the depths and uncovering more secrets of the ancient civilization. They forged a deeper connection with the Leviathan, learning to communicate with it and understand its needs. Years passed, and the Oceanus became a beacon of hope and discovery, its crew dedicated to the mission of protecting the ocean and its wonders. Evelyn, now a respected elder in the scientific community, stood on the deck, gazing out at the horizon. "Ready for another adventure?" Marcus asked, joining her at the railing. Evelyn smiled, her eyes filled with determination. "Always. The ocean still has many secrets to reveal, and we're just getting started." As the Oceanus set sail once more, the Leviathan watched from the depths, its eyes glowing with a knowing light. It had seen civilizations rise and fall, but it had also seen the enduring spirit of discovery and wonder. And in that spirit, it found hope for the future. The legend of the Leviathan of the deep would continue to inspire and captivate. But now it was more than just a tale of terror and treasure. It was a story of connection, understanding, and the boundless mysteries of the ocean. And it was a story that would be told for generations to come.